Now once you've got several clips in the timeline, you can actually easily just slide the clips around in the timeline to reorder things. If you just pick this clip up here and move it over, drop it in between two edit points, you can see it drops in and the clips around it move forward to accommodate. Let's do another one. I'll take this clip right from the end and I'll bring it right to the beginning. So drop it in right at the beginning and you'll see everything else moves up. This is what Apple called a magnetic timeline. Wherever you move a clip and reposition it, basically the clips around it move to accommodate. It's magnetic, meaning things slide out of the way to accommodate what you're putting in. Here's another example. Pick up this clip, drop it in, and the clips slide around to accommodate. If you don't like that, you can turn that off just by pressing the letter P. So P for position, pick up a clip, and then move it, and it will do an overwrite onto wherever you drop it. But the thing is, you'd lost the content that was there. So if I hit Command Z for undo, still with the letter P, drop it between two clips and watch it, it overwrites. It does not push everything up and it leaves a gap where you were. So you could then go back and delete the portion of the gap and it will close. So between the standard way of working, which is the magnetic timeline, and using the position tool, which is the letter P, you can very easily just juggle shots around. You can even pick up several shots at once. Here I want to move those 3 shots over, drop them in there, and there we go, it writes over. That's because I'm still using the position tool. If I undo, press A, which is the home tool. Here we go. A for select, pick up the 3 clips, drop it in, and it will push them up. So between the letter A for the home tool, which is basically the tool that you always work with, except when you want to step away from that tool, and the letter P, which is for positioning, you can quickly move things around and quickly either insert, which effectively pushes everything up using the A tool, or P for position, which will do an overwrite. So it's pretty straightforward and it's very powerful. I have to make the point as well, if you're going to pick up clips and reposition them, you can actually drop them onto the second layer and they become a connected clip. Now, I did speak about connected clips earlier. They're incredibly useful. It's basically a means to work with clips on a second layer away from the primary storyline. Just making the point that the primary storyline is where the main structure of your edit will take place. Some people like to put down a voice bed in the primary storyline, or a music track, or just a montage, so you know that's your main edit, that's what you're working to, and everything around it is built on top or below it, which can be used as clips to cut away or as audio drop-ins, but the main edit itself, the main structure, should take place in the primary storyline, which is defined by this grey strip here. So you always know where your main edit is. That's the primary storyline. Now, when you've got footage as connected clips, you can easily move that into the primary storyline if you wish. Just pick up the clip and drag it between 2 clips and you'll see it will slot back in and everything else will then shunt along to the right to accommodate. So it's very easy to pick up 1 or more clips, make them into connected clips. Obviously when you play, that is what you see, the connected clips as an overwrite on top of the content which is below it. Or if you want to drag those 2 clips back into the primary storyline itself, just highlight them, drag in between 2 clips, release, and everything shunts to accommodate. So we talked about how to edit clips into the timeline, how to edit audio only, video only, or audio and video together, how to slide clips around, how to position them using the P tool if you want to overwrite, select the A tool if you want to go back into the magnetic timeline as we call it. This is all well and good for basic editing, but what you as the editor need to be able to do is work with separate video and audio in the timeline once you've already got the footage there. It's pretty easy to do. Let me show you how. Okay, if you highlight a clip that's got video and audio associated with it, you can go up and choose from the clip menu, detach audio. If you choose detach audio, very quickly you get a separate audio track. Now that's very handy because it means that you can quickly work with audio or video independent of each other. Now I have to make the point that the audio, which is still stuck to the video by this little join here because it's a connected clip, that actually will move with the video if you pick up that clip and move it. You can see it's still joined together. However, if you pick up the audio separately, you can totally separate it from video altogether, which is what you need to be able to do as the editor. Audio and video need to be able to be separated, and they also need to be able to link together as you need them. So as you can see, we've got it together there. It's as simple as highlighting the clip, choosing the clip menu, and then choosing detach audio. And as you can see, I've now separated the audio. The thing is, most clips that you work with will actually have 2 audio tracks associated with it. If I control click on the audio clip itself and choose open in timeline, you can see I then get access to the 2 channels of audio, channel 1 and channel 2, as was recorded on location when the camera original was recorded. Press this little tab, this arrow to the left at the top left of the interface, and that will take you back to where you were already working. You can also highlight the clip and choose break apart clip items, and that will do a similar thing. That gives you access to the 2 audio tracks. So when you're editing, obviously it's always about picture and audio, and whether the picture and audio is edited together or separately, or whether you edit audio on its own, or whether you edit video on its own, or whether you edit audio and video together. So anyone that's done a lot of editing will be well familiar with that. That's what you've got to be able to do. It may be a case that while you've been shooting on location, you've got the camera mic on one channel and you've got a person being interviewed with the good audio going to another track. Just by selecting these tracks and then choosing clip, break apart clip items, you can see I've quickly separated 3 tracks together for audio and video. And you can choose then to get rid of, if this clip has the camera mic on it, where you want the good audio which has been recorded through a separate lapel mic perhaps, well then you can press the delete key and you'd remove the bad audio. So very quickly and very effectively you can get inside your clip, see the audio as either one track or see it as 2 separate tracks according to how it was recorded. And there's yet one more thing which I've got to point out regarding audio, which is very connected with the editing. I mean, we can't get away from the fact that audio and picture do often get edited together. It may be that you choose to fine-tune the audio edit later on, but while you're working, you're always going to be editing audio at the same time, whether you're getting rid of bad audio, boosting the level of some good audio, whatever you need to do. Okay, so if I click on a clip and I look to the inspector, you'll see that we have 3 tabs: video, audio, and info. And if I choose the audio tab, without deleting any of the tracks, I can quickly choose to get rid of one of the tracks. We can quickly see there are 2 tracks there, and by listening you may very quickly be able to pinpoint what's the good audio and what's the bad audio. Now let's return to the concept of storylines. I mentioned storylines earlier. We've got what's called the primary storyline, which is where the main action in the edit happens. It's where you build your edit. Whenever you do an insert or override edit, it affects the primary storyline. If you do a connected edit, which is Q, it actually moves up a level and becomes a connected edit. But what you can actually do is you can create secondary storylines. So if I was to put a bunch of clips on the next layer up and actually reduce those to size, okay, let's put a few clips together. Okay, I can actually merge those 3 clips above the primary storyline into what is going to be a secondary storyline. Now if I highlight the clips, here we go, and then I choose clip, create storyline, you will see that it gets a parameter around the outside. You can see it's got an edge to it, and all those clips are now together in what's called a secondary storyline. The big advantage is if I pick this up, I can move those as a single unit. Okay, you'll see they all move together. And the other thing is, when working in a secondary storyline, all the same rules apply that apply in the primary storyline. For example, if I pick this clip up to the left and move it over, the magnetic timeline works within the secondary storyline. If I choose P, which I mentioned before, and move the clip, then it overwrites. So you've effectively got your primary storyline and a secondary storyline in action here. If you want to get the clips out of the secondary storyline, simply highlight the clips and then drag them out of the storyline and then delete that storyline, and now you're back to having a bunch of connected clips. Just be aware that connected clips and clips within a storyline function differently. If I move this clip here, you'll see there's no magnetic timeline in action. Okay, it's all functioning as standalone clips. If I create a storyline, all the rules of the primary storyline work within a secondary storyline. So you can have as many storylines as you want. You can have a primary storyline, which is the main bulk of the edit, where the structure is built, as I've said several times already. You can have a secondary storyline, you can have a third, fourth, fifth, as many storylines as you want. And the big thing is, all the clips will then move together within the storyline. So the secondary storyline and all the clips, as you pick them up, just pick it up, and everything moves together. And I can, again, if I want to reduce the size, let's just go to blocks to make things easier to see. I mentioned this earlier, it's just a nice way to actually get a condensed view of the timeline. Okay, let's say again I pick up those flower shots. I've got 3 shots of flowers, drop it on top. Okay, they are now separate clips. They are connected clips. You can always tell a connected clip by this little join here, which shows that it's connected to the storyline below it. Okay, if I put all those clips together, highlight, and say clip create storyline, we've now got 3 storylines, and they can all be moved independently of each other. So hopefully that makes some sense. As you get deep into the editing, a lot of these things that I'm running through will make a lot more sense. At the moment, I'm only talking in concepts, and concepts can be confusing and misleading because unless you've got a context to see it all in, then it may not make much sense. At this stage, just try and grasp the concepts that you can either have connected clips which operate independent of a storyline. They basically sit on top and you move them wherever you want them to be, or you can have storylines and you can create as many of those as you want. And when you've got a storyline, everything can move together as you wish. It's just a convenient way of putting a bunch of clips together and saying, I want you guys to operate together. I don't want you moving all over the place every time I pick one up that it's separated from everything else. So that is the concept of storylines. Okay, so let me just get rid of those storylines for now. Now, something else very useful is just to be able to cut, copy and paste, just like in the word processor. So highlight the clip you want to remove. In this case, I'm doing it with video and audio, which is attached as a connected clip. And I hit Command X, and you'll see that takes the clip out and the gap is closed. If I move to where I want to paste it, position the scrubber bar there, Command V, and I just pasted it. As simple as that. And likewise, I can copy a clip, Command C, and then I can paste, and it just slots into place. You can also paste as a connected clip, copy, and position where you want to go, position, and this time I'll press Option V, and it's now pasted that as a connected clip. So it's very powerful to be able to cut, copy and paste and be able to put this content into the storyline, either within the primary storyline or to do it as a connected clip. Like I said, just to run through it one more time. Command C for copy, work out where you want it to go. Command V will paste, undo. Option V will then do it as a connected clip. Okay, now when deleting content from the timeline, you can highlight a clip and press delete, and you'll see the gap gets closed. Undo that. If you hold the Shift key and press Shift delete, then it leaves a gap. So that's very handy. Shift delete will leave a gap, and if you just press delete without holding Shift, then the timeline will close up. One more time, there we go. Okay, highlight, delete, closes the gap. Shift delete, and the gap remains, and it's been effectively inserted filler into that area, so it doesn't affect the duration of the timeline when you delete. All these techniques come into play while you're editing. Now, very important, you've got to be able to access a bunch of tools that will help you with the editing process. So if you click this arrow here, you'll see a drop-down menu, and we've got a whole load of tools to choose from. You've got Select, Trim, Position, Range Selection, Blade, Zoom, and Hand. Now you pretty much need to know what all of these tools do, though I'll make the point that there are some tools that you'll use a whole lot more than others. Okay, now let's start with a very simple tool, the Zoom tool, which is the letter Z or Z. Now you can see that turns the actual icon that you're working with into a magnifier. So if you're on the Home tool, press Z or Z to get to zoom, and it just lets you zoom in on the timeline. Or press the Option key, and that will let you go the other way, so you can increase or decrease the size of the timeline in front of you. Okay, increase, decrease. That's the zoom tool. I'll also make the point that you can zoom while in the timeline by holding the command key and pressing plus or minus. Plus zooms and minus basically contracts. So it will zoom according to the point where you have the playhead positioned in the timeline. Command plus and command minus. That should be pretty self-explanatory. Okay, also in the tools, we have the position tool that I mentioned. I'll just show you one more time. P for position, pick up a clip and you can put it wherever you want it to be and it will overwrite. Likewise, you can do it with a connected clip and drop it into the primary storyline to overwrite. If I select A, which is the home tool for select, then every time you drop a clip into another area, then the magnetic timeline comes into action and everything gets pushed on either side of it. It will be increased in duration or decreased. There we go. And you can see using the select tool, when you move a clip, it pushes the other clips around it forward. And if you use the P tool, highlight those two, press P, drop it wherever you choose, it overwrites that section of the timeline. Okay, beyond those tools, we talked about zoom, we talked about position and select. Always return to the select tool. This is the home tool. That's where you want to go back to at any stage. When you're working, always go back to the home tool, which is select. It gives you grounding. It lets you know exactly where you are. And when you use another tool, use it, perform a function, and then choose select. At least that's the way I work, because I always want to know exactly where I am. Okay. Now, a killer tool, the blade tool. This is a tool I use all the time. Choose blade or press the letter B. The blade lets you cut through whatever you position it on, and you can then remove or reposition the area that you'd razor bladed. So highlight those two bits and it closes the gap. If I was to hold shift and press delete, then it leaves the gap in place. B for blade, chop, chop. You can use it on audio or video, whatever you choose. Be careful you don't get yourself into a mess when you've got audio and video separated, but effectively the blade does what you would expect a blade to do, is it cuts through that content in the timeline, and then you can choose to cut, copy, paste that content or choose to remove it. The blade is a tool I use all the time. I'd say it's one of my favorite tools. You always want to hack down your footage, and the blade gives you the means to do that very quickly and easily, just by pressing the letter B, cutting through the section you want and pressing delete. Okay, so continuing with running through the tools, if we just have a look, we've still got to talk about the range selection tool and the trim tool. Now, just to do this, I'm just going to get rid of everything in the timeline. And I'm going to go through to my roam footage and I'm just going to put a bunch of clips into the timeline. Okay, press the letter E. All those clips are now edited into the timeline, and if I just go to the audio only display, I think that's pretty good for what I need to demonstrate with the range tool. Okay, so we've got the audio setting. In fact, what I'll show is audio and video together. Okay, so the actual range tool itself enables you to drag over a clip, highlight a section, and then select the bit in the middle, which is how you adjust your audio levels, drag it down, and you can see that what we've been able to do, if I expand that, is to actually dip the audio. So quickly, by marking a range, we can then do an audio fade on either side, which is very convenient. So R for range, which is the range tool, drag over a specific bit of the timeline, and then just with your cursor, drag the central bit in the middle, which actually represents the audio levels. And there we go. And if I expand that once again, you can see that it's programmed an audio fade. You can then click on these points and then move them over as you wish. So the range tool basically gives you a very quick and easy way to perform an audio fade within a single clip. It's great for when you've got someone talking and then there's sound effects and the sound effects get loud, and you can just go into the clip with the sound effects, drop the audio. You might not want to lose them completely, but you may want to effectively dip it at the right point. So very useful. Okay, the final tool I'm going to talk about is actually the trim tool. Now, before we get to the trim tool, you can actually trim your edits in a few ways. The easiest way is just to use the blade tool. Click, back to the A tool, which is the home tool, select, and then delete the section you want, and you've now trimmed that edit. Now that's not really trimming, that's just slicing a bit away, but for all intents and purposes you can trim an edit by using the razor blade. But there are much more sophisticated and precise ways to do it. The first, and again before we jump into the trim tool, is just to click on either end of an edit point and just drag, and you can reduce the length of the edit that way. Now when you're doing that, that's actually affecting the duration of the timeline. You can see that the whole timeline is becoming shorter as I drag. Likewise, I can drag from the beginning point on an edit. But it does affect the duration of the timeline. If you use the trim tool, which is actually T for trim, that what you can do is you can actually roll your edits, which is fantastic. If you've never rolled edits, here we go. T for trim, and position right on the central point, and you can see that without affecting the overall duration of the timeline, I can move the edit according to the amount of available media. Now if I just slice a big piece out of those two clips and remove the media, this means that I've got plenty of media to work with. The way it works is it refers back to the amount of video that you've got in the original clip on hard drive, so you can only roll according to how much media there is to work with. Okay, T for trim, and you can now move that edit within the parameters of what actually exists on hard drive. So it's a quick way to get in and move the edit point without affecting the duration of the edit, and I find it incredibly useful. Okay, and when you're trimming with audio that's separated from video, you'll notice that video is trimmed independent of the audio, and likewise you can trim your audio however you wish, and that doesn't affect the video. So there's a lot more in editing that I haven't covered, but I've covered the essentials and the most important parts. More than anything, you need to understand the difference between insert editing and override editing. Basically, insert will increase the duration of the timeline, whereas overwrite will write over a portion of the timeline. You need to know your tools. You've got to understand what the position tool does, what the home tool is, the select tool, how to zoom within the timeline. These are all very important things. In terms of trimming, you need to be able to understand how to trim using the trim tool just to roll the edit, or use the blade tool as I described earlier just to chop away some of the edit. And most importantly, in addition to everything I've already said, you've got to be able to basically separate audio from video, and you can do that by detaching the audio, by breaking clip items apart, or you can basically keep the audio and video as one unit. But to get into the fine details of editing, you need to be able to basically separate audio from video at will, and that applies when you're editing content into the timeline, when you wish to edit audio only or video only, or if you wish to edit them together, or if you wish to break them apart, separate them so that you can work on the audio separate from the video. It's all important. But by using the software is how you will learn.